Everyone keeps telling you the market is about to fall apart. The headlines are screaming recession. The analysts are nervous. The bear case is everywhere. And yet, one of the most precise macro strategists alive right now is saying something that makes almost no sense at first, that before any of the pain arrives, we could be looking at a 30% surge in the Nasdaq, maybe more. And the terrifying part is not that he's wrong. The terrifying part is that he might be exactly right. Important disclaimer before we go any further. Nothing in this video is financial advice. This is analysis and commentary for educational purposes only. Always consult a qualified financial professional before making investment decisions. Welcome to the market continuum. If you are new here, this channel is where we pull back the curtain on the macro forces most investors are either ignoring or flat out missing. If that sounds like something you want more of, you already know what to do. Hit subscribe, because what we are about to break down today is one of those conversations that changes how you see the entire market. Stay with me until minute 14, because that is where the real danger reveals itself. And if you leave before then, you will completely miss the part that most people will only understand after it is too late. Let's get into it. Henrik Zeberg is not a name you hear casually tossed around in financial media. He is the head macroeconomist at Swiss Block, the author of a framework called the Monetary House of Cards, and he has built a reputation, a very specific, uncomfortable reputation, for identifying major market turning points before they happen. Not after. Before. He is not a perma-bull. He is not a perma-bear. He is something rarer and more dangerous. A psychoanalyst. Someone who reads the rhythm of economic history and finds where we are inside it right now. And here is what he is saying in late April of 2026. The Nasdaq has not seen its top yet. We could be heading into a surge of 30% or more before the real damage begins. His latest published work, as recently as the first quarter of this year, lays out a scenario where markets rally sharply, driven not by genuine economic strength, but by something far more powerful and far more deceptive. The collective expectation that the Federal Reserve is about to step in. Think about that for a second. Markets moving higher because things are getting worse. Because the worse the data looks, the more investors believe the Fed will cut rates. And the moment they believe that, the buying begins. Not because the economy is healthy, because they believe they are going to be saved. This is not optimism. This is a trap being set in real time. Let's talk about what Zeberg is actually predicting and why it matters right now, today, in late April of 2026. The Nasdaq Composite closed the week of April 24th at approximately 24,837 points. That is near a record high. The index spent the first quarter of this year losing around 7% of its value. Geopolitical instability in the Middle East, rising oil prices, recession fears, and then it staged a powerful comeback through April, driven by AI earnings momentum, a ceasefire extension between Israel and Lebanon, and optimism around potential US-Iran diplomatic contacts. So from the outside, the story looks like the market fell and then it recovered. Normal stuff, healthy correction, healthy bounce. But Zeberg's red is something else entirely. He is not looking at headlines. He is looking at structure, and the structure he sees is something that has appeared before, twice to be precise, and both times it ended catastrophically. He describes this as wave 5 of a long-term Elliott wave structure in the Nasdaq that stretches back to the early 2000s. Wave 2 was the 2007 through 2009 crash. Wave 4 was the 2018 through 2020 correction. And right now, in his framework, we are in the final acceleration phase, the blow-off top, the part where price detaches from fundamentals, where narratives become dominant, and where the most dangerous thing that can happen is that the market goes up. His specific forecast. The Nasdaq could surge between 30 and 45% from its recent lows before a historic reversal. If you take even the more conservative end of that range and apply it to where we are sitting today, you're talking about a potential target somewhere north of 32,000 points on the Nasdaq Composite, inside a year or less. That should feel exciting, and that is exactly the problem. But here is what they are not telling you. The setup for that rally is not coming from strength. It is coming from weakness, wearing the mask of strength. And understanding the difference between those two things is the entire game right now. Let me break down the core logic of how this works, because it is not complicated once you see it. It has 3 layers, and each one feeds the next. The first layer is the liquidity mechanism. Zeberg's framework, and the broader macro picture right now, centers on one uncomfortable truth. Markets do not primarily move on logic, earnings, or even fundamentals in the short run. They move on liquidity, on the availability and direction of money in the financial system. Right now, the Federal Reserve is navigating a narrow and uncomfortable corridor. Inflation remains above target. Core PCE is running somewhere around 2.7% as we head through mid-2026. And yet the labor market is beginning to show early signs of softening. The unemployment rate is expected to drift toward 4.5% through this year. That combination creates pressure on the Fed from both sides. They can't raise aggressively because the economy is wobbling. They can't cut aggressively without risking an inflation resurgence. But here's the thing. The market does not need the Fed to actually cut. The market only needs to believe that cuts are coming. The moment that belief solidifies, financial conditions loosen on their own. Long-duration assets get repriced higher. Risk appetite returns. Capital that was sitting on the sidelines starts moving. And when capital starts moving in a market where most institutional players have been defensively positioned, you get something that looks almost violent in its speed. That is the second layer, what Zeberg and others call the positioning trap. For most of the first quarter of 2026, sentiment was deeply pessimistic. Recession fears dominated. Hedge funds and professional investors had reduced their risk exposure significantly. That positioning itself becomes fuel, because when the market starts to move against that bearish positioning, those same investors are forced to buy. Not because they want to, but because their risk models demand it. Short sellers cover. Underweight longs chase. Funds that had been sitting in cash begin reallocating. The technical term for this is a short squeeze. But when it happens at the macro level across an entire index, across trillions of dollars of assets, it stops being a squeeze and starts being a melt-up. Stay with me, because the third layer is where this becomes genuinely dangerous. The third layer is retail FOMO. Late-stage rallies almost always see the same thing happen. After the institutional money has already begun moving, retail investors see the index climbing and start piling in. Not strategically, emotionally. They see the Nasdaq printing new highs. They see AI stocks surging. They see friends talking about gains. They do not want to be the person who missed it. This FOMO wave is not just anecdote. It is a documented feature of every major speculative peak in market history. It happened in 1999. It happened in 2007. And if Zeberg's thesis is correct, it is the final act of the current cycle playing out right now. This is the exact environment where markets move the fastest and the most dangerously. Now, before we get to the specific signal that Zeberg is watching, and this is the part that most people completely miss, let's talk about history for a moment, because the pattern here is not unique. It has played out before with almost mechanical precision. Think about the dot-com era. By late 1999, the Nasdaq had been in a multi-year bull run fueled by speculation around internet companies with almost no earnings. And yet, even as warning signs were building, even as valuations had become untethered from any reasonable measure of value, the index continued to surge. From August to December of 1999, the Nasdaq added roughly 80% in 5 months. After everyone with common sense had already said, this cannot last. And then it lasted a little longer, and then it didn't. Or consider 2007. Here's a detail that most people have forgotten. In the summer of 2007, credit markets were already beginning to crack. Bear Stearns hedge funds had collapsed. The subprime mortgage crisis was clearly visible to anyone paying attention. And yet, the Nasdaq surged by roughly 25% from August into October of that year. In a matter of weeks, while the foundations of the financial system were quietly fracturing beneath the surface. Both of those moments share something critical. Markets do not crash from pessimism. They crash from exhausted optimism. The selling begins not when things look bad, but when there is no one left to buy. That is what Zeberg means when he talks about the melt-up preceding the downturn. He's not predicting a rally despite the risks. He is predicting a rally because of how those risks are currently positioned in investor psychology. Right before major crashes, markets often go parabolic, not gradually, parabolic. Comment below, do you think the Nasdaq pushes higher from here before any real sell-off arrives? Type rally if you see the melt-up playing out, or crash if you think the top is already in. And there is one specific indicator Zeberg is watching right now that has just started flashing again. This is where it gets really concerning. The indicator is the yield curve, specifically the relationship between the 10-year U.S. Treasury yield and the shorter duration maturities, primarily the 2-year and the 3-month. Here is why this matters, and why it is currently behaving in a way that should make every serious investor stop and pay attention. For roughly 2 years, from 2022 through 2024, the U.S. yield curve was deeply inverted. That means short-term interest rates were higher than long-term rates, the opposite of what normally happens in a healthy economy. Yield curve inversion has preceded every single U.S. recession since 1955 without exception. Everyone. But here's the part that almost nobody talks about. The inversion itself does not cause the crash. What causes the crash is what happens next, the uninversion. When the yield curve rapidly steepens back toward normal territory, that is when recessions historically begin, often within 3 to 6 months. And as of now, late April of 2026, the 10-year minus 2-year spread is sitting in positive territory and has been steepening. The 10-year minus 3-month spread, which Zeberg specifically references in his framework, broke back above zero after a prolonged inversion and is now running around positive 0.5%. That is almost precisely the pattern seen going into 2001 and again going into 2008. This is the part most people miss because it looks bullish at first. The yield curve is no longer inverted. Great news, right? Banks can make money again. Credit conditions should improve. Everything is fine. Except it is not fine because historically, this signal, this rapid steepening after a deep inversion, is not the all clear. It is the starting gun for the recession that the inversion was warning about in the first place. The yield curve uninverts because the Fed is expected to cut, or has begun cutting, which happens because economic data is deteriorating, which means the recession is already beginning, even if the official numbers have not caught up yet. And here is the cruel irony of the whole thing. The prospect of rate cuts sends the stock market higher, in the short term, because investors front-run the liquidity that cutting rates will eventually inject into the system. So you get rising stocks at the same moment the economy is quietly cracking at the foundation. This is precisely the dynamic Zeberg is describing, and it is precisely what happened in 2007. Let me now show you why this particular rally, if it happens, could be the most dangerous one in years. Not because it will not happen, but because of what it will feel like while it is happening. When markets rally 30 or 40% in a compressed window driven by liquidity expectations and short covering and retail FOMO, it does not feel like a trap. It feels like vindication. It feels like the bears were wrong. It feels like everything is going to be okay. And that feeling is the mechanism by which the damage is ultimately done. Think about the positioning dynamic in reverse now. If the rally plays out the way Zeberg describes, a powerful, fast move higher in the Nasdaq over the coming weeks or months, what happens to investor psychology? The people who are cautious start to feel foolish. The people who are bearish get squeezed out and forced to cover. The people who are sitting in cash start to feel like they are falling behind. So they buy, late, near the top. And then the reversal comes. This is not a coincidence or bad luck. It is the mechanical outcome of how markets function at the end of major cycles. Smart money does not ring a bell at the top. It distributes, quietly selling into the strength, as retail money provides the demand. Zeberg has noted something in his recent work that cuts to the heart of this. The rally that is coming, if it comes, will not be confirmed by strength in the real economy. Earnings growth for Nasdaq 100 components has been strong, around 20% year-on-year in the first quarter of 2026, according to FactSet data. But the broader economic picture tells a more complicated story. ISM manufacturing has been running below 50, signaling contraction. Consumer confidence has been fragile, and the labor market, while not collapsing, is softening at the margins in a way that mirrors the early stages of previous downturns. In a healthy bull market, rising stocks reflect rising economic conditions. In a melt-up, rising stocks reflect the belief that someone, the Fed, will rescue the situation. The distinction sounds academic, but when the rescue does not arrive fast enough or in large enough quantity, the unwind can be severe. The faster this goes up, the harder it can fall. Now, the obvious question, what do serious, thoughtful investors actually do in an environment like this? And I want to be very clear. Nothing I say here is investment advice, but there are frameworks that are worth understanding because the behavioral mistakes that destroy wealth in late cycle environments are almost always the same ones. The first framework is about distinguishing between the rally and what comes after it. If Zeberg's thesis plays out, the melt-up phase is not the opportunity, or at least not straightforwardly. The opportunity is in understanding the sequence. A trader with exceptional timing and risk discipline might navigate a fast, leveraged move higher, but most people are not traders. Most people are investors. And for investors, chasing a melt-up in the final phase of a cycle, without a clear exit framework, is one of the most consistent ways to give back years of gains in a matter of months. The second framework is about macro signal watching rather than price watching. The price going up is not the signal. The yield curve dynamic we discussed, that is a signal. Rising initial jobless claims above 250,000 per week, sustained over several weeks. That is a signal. ISM manufacturing staying persistently below 50, that is a signal. Watching the price and making decisions based on direction alone is how retail investors consistently end up buying the top. The third framework is simply risk management, position sizing, knowing what you own, why you own it, and at what price level the thesis breaks. In environments like this, where the range of outcomes is unusually wide, a 30% rally on one side, a severe crash on the other, the cost of being wrong with concentration is catastrophic. Diversification is not a weakness in a late cycle environment. It is the only rational acknowledgement that the future is uncertain. Because the real opportunity here is not just the rally, The real opportunity is in what comes after, and being positioned to take advantage of it rather than devastated by it. Let's bring it all together now, because I want to paint the full picture of what Zeberg is describing, and what it would mean if this scenario plays out more or less as he has outlined it. The timeline, as he has publicly discussed as recently as late March of this year, and this is his own framing, not mine, is roughly this. A market top forming around mid-2026, potentially in May or thereabouts, followed by a bounce related to the November midterm election dynamics, and then the real crash arriving in late 2026 through early 2027. In other words, the melt-up comes first, then a peak, then a counter rally, then the serious damage begins. If you visualize that as a shape, it is a fast rise to a high, a sharp drop, a partial recovery that tricks people into thinking the worst is over, and then a second and more severe decline that catches most investors completely off guard. We have seen this shape before. It is the shape of 2008. It is the shape of 2002. Both of those periods destroyed enormous amounts of wealth. Not primarily in the initial decline, but in the false recovery that made people hold on or even buy more right before the second wave. The mechanism Zeberg points to for the eventual downturn is deflationary. A reversal of the liquidity tide, rising credit stress, a labor market that weakens too fast for the Fed to compensate, and a recognition across markets that the AI-driven productivity narrative, while not entirely false, has been priced well beyond what near-term fundamentals can support. What this creates is not a slow, grinding decline. It creates a panic phase, a moment where the sellers overwhelm the buyers across nearly every asset class simultaneously, and the people who got caught holding the bag at the top of the melt-up, the late buyers, the FOMO chasers, the people who felt foolish for being cautious and finally gave in, are the people who absorb the most damage. This is the part that Zeberg himself has described as a potential turning point that market historians will talk about for years. Not because it is unprecedented in direction, markets crash periodically, always have, always will, but because of how misleading the setup is. Because a rally that looks like validation is actually the last chapter before the reckoning. And if this plays out, it could be one of the most misleading rallies in years. So let me leave you with this. The Nasdaq composite is sitting near record highs as of late April 2026. The AI narrative is real and powerful. Earnings from the largest technology companies are genuinely strong. And yet, underneath all of that, the yield curve has uninverted in a pattern that has preceded every major recession in the modern era. The labor market is softening. ISM manufacturing is contracting. Consumer sentiment is fragile. And one of the most precise cycle analysts operating today is saying that the next move higher could be the most dangerous rally we have seen in years, precisely because it will be real and fast and convincing. The question is not whether the market goes up or down in the short term. The question is whether you understand where you are inside the cycle when it does. Would you trust this rally if it comes, or would you stay cautious? I genuinely want to know your thinking. Drop it in the comments below. This community has some of the most thoughtful perspectives I have come across anywhere, and these conversations make the analysis sharper for everyone. If today's breakdown gave you something worth thinking about, subscribe to the Market Continuum. This is where we do the work that most financial media does not. Not the surface narrative, not the hot take, not the sensational headline. The underlying architecture, the forces that move before the crowd sees them moving. Because the biggest moves in the market almost always fool the most people. Something is shifting. Most people are going to miss it. You just got a little closer to seeing it.